Scotty Roberts was instrumental in the workings of the Prairie Striders. He was a fabulous doctor. He always had a schedule that was full of patients, and yet he was so diversified that that he was one of our all-time most influential members to our club. He was the first race director, not of the longest day marathon, because Jay Dirksen was the race director of the first longest day marathon, and Jay he not only was the race director of the first year in 1970, he ran the race and he won the race, and he was the race director. So after that, Scotty Roberts kind of took over the directorship of the longest day marathon, and he probably was the race director for over 20 straight years, and he was very detailed, and he did a fabulous job. He had all the bases covered. The courses were certified. He had all the workers that were needed at that time, and he held after the race was over, he'd hold a meeting of all the workers at his house, and we'd talk until late hours of the morning about how we could improve the longest day marathon. And he was he had his own. He was a better runner than people gave him credit for. He ran lots of marathons, and then he was the first one to run a 50-miler. He moved up into ultra running, and they held a 50-miler in Bismarck, North Dakota, back in those days, and he went to that several times, and he was a hard-nosed guy out on the race path. And he knew pace. We had other things our club did that were instrumental in teaching people pace. We held back in those days they had postal runs, and one of them that was nationwide was the hour run on the track. Well, we latched onto that hour run and even expanded on it and staged 2-hour runs on the track. And it has many benefits, but the major benefit of the hour run on the track is it is the best teacher of pacing that anyone could contrive. It absolutely, if you did it correctly, you would learn pace in 1 hour, because you could get on what you thought was your level of pace for 1 lap. In those days, of course, we had yards, and it was a 440-yard track, and we had an announcer, naturally, that read the time of every runner as they crossed this particular mark on the track. So they would know just what pace they were on if they could do some easy calculating in their heads. For instance, if you were a 6-minute miler, why you ran 90 seconds. Well, you sat on 90 seconds, and if it felt just right, why you stayed with 90 seconds. If you weren't that fit, why you couldn't hang on to 90 seconds. You'd find yourself pretty soon moving up to 91, 2, 3, 4, 90, and it showed you right away just what you should do. Now, if you moved, believe it or not, if you moved 1 or 2 seconds slower or faster from the pace that you really should be running, why, you noticed it. You knew it right away. All of a sudden you were breathing harder to maintain the pace if you moved up to an 88. And it was a fabulous teacher. So we encouraged all of our racing team people to run the hour run. We would stage 2 a year, 1 in the fall and 1 in the spring. We'd send in the results to a national organization, and they would print the results, and it was a super thing for everybody to do. But very few clubs and very few towns went into that hour run as one of their races. But we were very high on it. So and Scotty Roberts, I got off the subject matter there. Scotty Roberts loved that race also, and I had a brother, Lorney, and we got Lorney involved into it. He was quite a lot older than I was, but he at one time he held the national 2-hour run on the track record for his age. So there were a lot of things, and Scotty Roberts was able to get a national record in the 1-hour run. See, we had this library going then, so we knew we could keep up on the trends, and we could keep up on the national scene, and then we could enter people in those kind of postal races, and it was just good for our club and our racers, and it raised the level of performance for everyone.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Russ Strande and having Russ Strande as a member of the Prairie Striders?
Oh, you bet. Russ, he was quite unique. He ended up being a very good distance runner, but as a high school student in Volga, why, he was a sprinter. And that of course happens to many people. They start out being sprinters on their local track team, and they evolve into road racing as they age, and they find the camaraderie is so good, and naturally it is competitive if you want it to be competitive, but it's also there's the friendship angle that comes into the training with distance running that you don't experience if you're just a sprinter. So Russ, he's a perfect example of that. He started out, he was a 100-yard dash man in Volga, South Dakota, and a good one, but he evolved into running all kinds of Jack 15s and marathons as he aged, and he encouraged his track people and cross country people to do distance running as part of their training. So Russ was a good example of what can be done when you go to work and put in the miles. Russ was pretty indestructible, and he wasn't hurt a lot, and he would easily run 2,000, 2,500 miles a year, and I think several times he even went over 3,000 miles in training. We used to meet at Russ Strande's house on Sunday mornings, and at that time, why the SDSU distance kids were when Jay was around, why they were still running 2-3 times a day, and they'd go on their easy long distance run with us on Sunday mornings, where we'd meet at Russ Strande's house. So those are fun times. We would have 15, 20 people that would think nothing of running over to Aurora and back on Sunday morning.
Wow.
And Russ was always with us. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about Brookings being a running community even before the 60s? Jim Emmerich, had quite a program here established in the 50s, coming out of
definitely. Yeah, Jim Emmerich, you bet. He was ahead of his time on his thinking, and he had some fabulous cross country teams in the 50s, and it hadn't really brushed off on the citizens of Brookings in the 50s. They just the running craze wasn't there, but Jim Emmerich and his programs, they extended into track and field, and he was a fabulous coach in track and field, and they just won the conference almost every year. But it extended into cross country, so he had all the bases covered, and his cross country team would score points for the track team, and vice versa, and yet he could assemble a track team that was nobody could beat him in the conference in the 50s, and Iowa teachers would try as hard as they could in northern Iowa, but Emmerich had the answers, and as strict as he was, he still liked to win, I guess is the best way to put it, and he would actually allow some of his athletes to not come to practice if they'd come to the conference meet, because they were natural athletes, and they could score third or fourth in the pole vault or the high jump without practicing, and Jim would permit that, which was a shock to many of us, because he was a disciplinarian from the word go. But if you could score points, he could overlook some of your tardiness on practice time.